Welcome everyone to the Bainbridge Island Senior Community Center's mini series on Senior Living 101. My name is Katie Auger and I am the Community Resource Navigator with the Senior Center. I'm delighted to have with me today Lois Jasmer from Brookdale Senior Living. She has come up with this idea to do this mini series. I'm going to go ahead and hand the mic over to Lois and she'll introduce our guest for today.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you, Reed. Thanks for letting us do this series. This is the last one in our series for this time around, at least. And it's gone really well. It's been really fun. I'm excited to hear from our two speakers today. So today we have Natassja Haynes, and she's from Bainbridge Island Senior Living. And they have several buildings on the island, and I'll let her tell you which ones they are. And then also this time we have Jennifer Calvin Myers on, and she's with Kitsap Aging and Long-Term Care. So she will be speaking on some Medicaid information today for those of you interested in that. So I'm going to start today with Natassja, and I'm just going to let her talk a little bit about the differences between assisted living and independent living. We've already had several of the other entities on. So Natassja, I will let you go ahead.
Hello, everyone. I hope you had a nice weekend. I had a nice weekend myself. Hi, my name is Natassja. I'm the Outreach and Move-In Coordinator for Bainbridge Senior Living. We have 4 buildings here on the island that range from independent living to assisted living and then also memory care. So today we're going to be talking about maybe a couple of differences and what it looks like for us between independent living and assisted living. And I'd first like to kind of just speak about what those are, because when you hear independent living, you're like, I already live independently. Why do I have to move to a place that's called independent living? And so part of the reason why we call it that is there isn't so much of a medical piece involved, whereas in assisted living, sometimes medical comes into play. So for our independent living, for example, we have an apartment complex, and there it's a 55 and older community, and it is a community there. So they amongst themselves kind of like to organize different events, and we do certain public transportation, and really the big time that we all get together, and it really has been a sense of community for everyone, is during dinner, because we do dinners at our independent living facility, and people have found that to be just a good time to be in contact with everyone. During COVID, it's been kind of interesting. We had to shut it down for a little bit, and then now it's back open, and I think everybody is just really itching for just a sense to talk to people and have companionship. And then, so that's independent, that's fully independent. Practically everybody's doing it now, so moving towards what assisted living looks like. So what we like to say is that people age in place, or it can be called graduated care. For this, so somebody can come move into one of our buildings, and we actually have quite a few snowbirds that live there, and so they'll come when the weather's nice in Washington. So like right now when it's absolutely wonderful but it's not too hot, we'll have these people live with us, and it's essentially it's great for people who are ready to maybe not cook as much, are ready to not do as much yard work, are ready to have a community of peers around them. And then if more needs arise, we're there to help for that. So it can look like a medication reminder, or it can look like maybe help in the shower if you need it, or even just having a friendly neighbor there to make sure you're doing okay and maybe somebody who can give your family a call and be like, hey, I haven't seen your mom around. I know she just went on a trip. I just want to make sure she's doing all right. So that's kind of what our services look like. It's just a good gist about us. I was curious to see if anybody had any questions. I find this as more
I
of
do.
Okay.
I got questions for you. Don't you worry.
Sure thing. Sure thing.
A person can independently live in assisted living. Can a person that needs assisted help live in independent living?
No. Or it's interesting in that way, we kind of have to keep an eye out. But if we notice that somebody is going to need more care, we just ethically, when they're with us, we cannot have someone who is in need of care living independently. If
I don't know about you, but I know some communities out there that are independent have in-home care come in. Are you able to, is that something that's available or that you guys could do if it was something, kind of minor?
I see what you're saying. Okay, I'm sorry. I think I was misunderstanding before. Yeah, that's totally possible for what we do. Yes. Yes. Okay. So it would be like you're living in a community and then in-home care could come.
Okay. So it could be like, let's say you moved into independent living because you didn't want to take care of your yard anymore. And then you found that you needed maybe just a shower once a week. You could have in-home care come in and do that, right? In independent. Okay.
Right.
So I know with independent and assisted living, two different entities probably are overseeing, like from a state or a level up there, that's regulations and stuff. Is it two different groups that watch over independent and assisted?
Oh, good question. So it's our assisted living facility that mainly has all the oversight. We're actually coming up upon that here soon. So we're called a domiciliary for for assisted living. And so through that, there's all this licensing that we do to make sure that we are doing proper care.
About assisted living in general, do all assisted livings offer the same level of care, like the same offerings? Do some do maybe more than others?
Good question. So I can really speak for what we do, and I'm sure all assisted living facilities look different. Particularly, we are a family business, whereas I think places that are more they're bigger and they have corporate offices. I think the differences between the two types of facilities are when you're family and in a family business, we make a lot more accommodations for people and their families. We sit down and have individual talks. Whereas it's been my findings from talking to people who have been shopping is that there's less movement with the big corporate assisted living facilities.
Okay, so some can do, for instance, some can do maybe like a Hoyer lift or a 2-person transfer where others couldn't, or maybe diabetic management at different. So it's kind of good depending on what you need. Is that what you're saying?
Of course, yes. Okay. So it's a very tailored experience.
Who would be maybe like a good candidate? Like, can you draw a little picture of like who the best candidate for assisted living might be and who the best candidate maybe for independent living might be?
Sure. And it's funny, there's a lot of crossover. So I will talk about, I'm thinking of a gal who just moved into our assisted living. So she had lost her spouse within this last year. So as people, I think we forget that you always live with someone your whole life. You go from living with your family to maybe having a roommate in school, then to having a spouse later on. So all of a sudden, I think not only did this woman who's gone from living with someone her whole life, and then in the middle of a pandemic, she decided to come live in an assisted living facility. So essentially, maybe somebody whose situation has recently changed, and it was a big change. That's what I often see people coming to assisted living. So to paint a portrait here, somebody who's had a big change in their life, who's looking for community. That's a big portion of what we do, is we provide a sense of community, and we have activities that we do. Let me see what else. People who are good for assisted living are also people who know that maybe down the line they would need more help. They know currently they're leaning on their family for help, and maybe they don't want to lean on their family anymore for that help. That's another thing I often see. Whereas somebody who's looking more in independent living, this is a person I have in mind, is somebody who goes biking every day and they want to talk to their friends to go biking with them. So, more mobile, and someone who has like just their whole social calendar, and they don't need anybody's help to figure out who they're hanging out with. So, yeah.
That's great. So I'm going to ask you one question here, and then I'm going to lead into Jennifer's subject. So I think one of the things that comes up, I see a lot, is people think that Medicare is going to pay for them to live in assisted living, or maybe even independent living, or their Medicaid. Can you just speak a little bit to whether or not those things pay for assisted living or independent living?
Right. So I can speak to our company, and we don't take Medicaid or Medicare for what the services we provide. That's really most that I can speak to. For all independent and assisted living facilities, I couldn't necessarily say.
Okay. Well, and I'm going to let Jennifer, when you're talking, if you could just hit on that subject, because I think the question in general, you might already have it on your list of things to tell us. So I'll let you, I think we'll go ahead and switch. Thank you, Natassja. And we may have some more questions pop up here as we go, okay?
Sure.
So all right, Jennifer.
Okay. So my name is Jennifer Calvin Myers, and I'm a program supervisor at Kitsap County Aging and Long-Term Care. And I'm going to show you just a quick reference, what we call as a rack card. It's basically just a quick snapshot of the services we provide, just to orient you to kind of my background and what information we're used to providing in the community. So we're actually funded for the majority through the Older Americans Act. So we provide our services for free. And well, at least no cost to you. They're not free, but you're not paying for them. Your tax dollars that you've paid into for most of your lives are helping pay for these services now. So if you can see our card, it's blue at the top. Does anyone want to nod their head and say, yeah, you can see that? Okay, good. So basically what we do here is we have a network of community-based services. We're connecting you to those services and local resources, and we're here to provide that customized person-centered assistance. So everyone's different for what situation they're going through. And so we're able just to hear what you've got going on, or maybe what you're trying to help someone else with. Often we find ourselves either in that neighbor role or that friend role, where we're trying to help people navigate these kind of aging and figuring out what we're going to do, planning, that kind of thing. So we're here for all of those kind of questions. And the real highlights here, this information and referral bullet on the top left, that's the main one that we can help you with. So on the second page here in a second, I'll show you our phone number. But anyone age 60 and over, or someone younger trying to help someone in that age 60 plus group, can call us for free and ask your question about, just like what Natassja was talking about, assisted living and independent living, and even adult family homes, and any of those questions. We're able to kind of sort through that with you as well, if you would like that. So we do the information referral, nutrition services, some legal information, counseling, caregiver support. So those family members, spouse couples, or adult children that are helping their aging parents or relatives can come to us for some support. We have kinship caregiver services too, when we have relatives who are helping raise their relatives who aren't the primary biological parents. The long-term care ombudsman, that's a advocacy support for people living in facilities. And then Medicare education, memory loss consultation, Medicaid case management, which I'm going to talk about Medicaid here in a minute. And then Natassja and MAC are a couple newer programs that can provide some services for people age 55 plus. And then on the back is just our contact info. So if you want to write down, this one is our website, agingkitsap.com. You can come learn about more of our programs there. And then our phone number, the 337-5700, that's the easiest way to call us and talk to someone about your question. Technically, we do have 3 offices in the county, but they are closed to the public right now. But we are in Port Orchard, Silverdale, and Polsville. So the next screen I wanted to show with you is that topic about Medicaid. So what I was saying is some people think Medicare and Medicaid are the same thing, or they'll say it like, oh, I have Medicare, Medicaid. And they're 2 separate things. So what this website I'm going to show you is in reference to long-term care, which is over here on the left. So long-term care is what we're talking about. When that question was asked, if you're in independent living, can you have a caregiver come in your home? That's considered long-term care. Can you live in assisted living? That's considered long-term care. So that long-term care umbrella really is going to have a variety of different living situations covered under that big term. So Medicare is our health insurance usually when we're age 65 and older, or if we've become disabled younger than 65. And so that Medicare is the health insurance, and health insurance doesn't pay for long-term care. The only time that comes up is for a rehabilitation stay, like at a nursing home, because it's related to a medical event. Maybe someone's had a hip replacement, maybe someone had a heart attack or a stroke, and they need rehab after that medical event to improve or make progress. So Medicare is really connected to that medical situation. Long-term care is that ongoing care that can, it's not happening. You might have medical issues, but your long-term care doesn't come into paying for it. What you might have heard before is long-term care insurance. Some people have purchased long-term care insurance through employer groups or privately to help them pay for things like assisted living, or even it can cross over sometimes to nursing homes as well, but they're separate type of insurances, if you will. So I'm going to stop for a second here and just click on this long-term services information. So when you're trying to think about long-term care and Medicaid, how Medicaid might play into this, this is why we're at that Washington State site. So Medicaid, it's a big word that gets used for health insurance too, because there is a Medicaid health insurance. Medicaid is also used to talk about long-term care, and it can be used for your in-home long-term care, or it can be used to talk about a facility like assisted living or an adult family home. So when we were talking with the question prior about Natassja's organization she works with, if they accept Medicaid, her particular one doesn't, but other ones in the community do. So that's where you have to do that checking around if you think you're going to be using Medicaid to pay for living at an assisted living or an adult family home. And I'll show you where to look for some of the ones that do accept them and which ones don't. The other thing to know, Medicaid has eligibility criteria. So you have to qualify financially and functionally. So functionally, that word gets equated to like our activities of daily living. Things we're doing like showering, transferring, meaning getting up and down out of chairs, walking, being able to bathe. So there's a few core components that are assisted daily or activities of daily living that this Medicaid program is going to assess someone for where they fall into being able to do some of them, maybe none of them, or a combination of it to figure out eligibility for Medicaid to pay for assisted living or an adult family home type of living situation compared to like an independent apartment that you just rent on your own and get no assistance. Because people need both that functional need and a financial need to qualify for Medicaid when they're looking at their long-term care needs. So on this website, if you visit that, there's a getting started area, which I'm not going to click on all of these. It does talk about in-home care services, long-term care housing, and then Medicaid. And then there are even specialized dementia care programs that the site will give people information on. So you can kind of cruise around this whole page, but I'm going to hone in real quick for us on this Medicaid portion. And this will give you a little bit more information about that long-term care side, and then the reminder about the medical component of Medicaid. So the first part here does a little description about Medicaid, tells you how you can apply. And then this booklet right here is really helpful. I'm going to open that in a minute for you. We have copies of these in our office, but it will give a review of all the different types of ways you can get long-term care support, meaning a caregiver in your home, maybe help paying for and living at assisted living. So there's a lot of options. So I won't get into it, but the book is very helpful to organize them all. And then the other thing here, this reminder about statewide health insurance benefit advisors. These are the people who can help you understand if you qualify for Medicaid that comes along with the insurance portion. So like I said, if somebody has Medicare, they might also qualify for Medicaid that ends up acting like a secondary insurance, like a secondary health insurance sometimes. That would be who you can check with on that. So that kind of just helps give that reminder of, okay, the Sheba part's a health insurance part. The top part is more long-term care. One thing with Medicaid to know, if you are considering it for long-term care, housing or living, this right here is state recovery. So Medicaid will, at the time of someone's death, be able to place a lien on their home if they own their own home. And then there's a caveat there, if a spouse is remaining living in that home, nothing will happen right at that point. But at some point, the state could recoup some of their expenses that they've paid on the behalf of someone's long-term care needs through the sale of their home after they've deceased and their living spouse is no longer living in that home. So there's some planning considerations around how you legally plan for protecting assets or putting them in certain trust, if you will, or things like that. If you think you're going to access Medicaid, but you would like to preserve maybe an asset to be passed along to someone else in your home instead of, or not your home, but in your family, instead of being subject to the estate recovery.
Jennifer,
So yeah.
Would you say that if you are a couple, it would be a really good idea to get some advice on that, especially if you own a home? Because
right. And to put it into perspective for you, so when I talk about Medicaid and who might be thinking they're going to use it, what I didn't say yet is Medicaid isn't available to all of us. It's not just someone you get the right to use because you live in Washington or because you're a certain age. I had mentioned earlier that it has a financial eligibility in addition to that functional eligibility. So what will happen is the financial piece looks at income, like gross income for a monthly amount, and somebody's assets or their resources. A spouse couple, for the initial eligibility, that's at about $3,000 of assets. Now, it's not counting a home or vehicles, but any investment savings, retirement plans, that type of thing. So the Medicaid program really is for people who don't have that many resources or assets available to them to offset the cost of their care. So depending on your financial situation, you may not be looking at Medicaid right away. But what I was going to say, when we get looking at Medicaid and how to find assisted living facilities, we already know not all facilities accept Medicaid, but even some of the ones that do may ask you to privately pay it first. And that may be okay for a while. You might have your own nest egg set aside to pay that. But over time, that's going to deplete possibly. When you get closer to that $3,000 asset limit for your investment accounts and things like that, then you can start to apply for Medicaid. So you have to work with that facility where you're at to really understand how they organize, being able to accept how many residents on Medicaid and not, and if they have a private pay requirement for a certain time frame, if it's a minimum of a year, 2 years, and then look at financially if you can afford that before utilizing Medicaid. So it's not something, Medicaid won't be automatic. It's not available to everyone all the time. So it does take some planning and thinking and working with attorneys to get some advice on if you think you're going to go down that road possibly.
Jennifer, again, if it's a couple, are they going to be, let's say only one of them needs to make the move. Are they going to be looking at both incomes, everything?
Yeah, initially both incomes will be looked at. But again, that planning, you can look at with the lawyers, they can look at how to plan for income in certain people's names or assets in other people's names. But
Right.
both spouses will be looked at for combined household income. And then what happens is a personal needs allowance gets figured out, or a spouse allowance for that spouse who remains living at the home, and maybe the one spouse who goes to a facility. So it's pretty complicated. So planning ahead is a good idea. And then you can also apply in advance and talk with the state about, and there's some eligibility information too.
Okay.
So, and what
So-
happens is, even if you have high income, you can still qualify. But what ends up happening is then your copay or your cost of care, when you do work with either in-home services for Medicaid or a facility like assisted living, you just end up having a little higher copay. That it's almost like a deductible. You pay for a
Right.
certain amount of your care, and then after you pay your part, the state pays the rest.
Right.
Even if you have a fairly high income. I mean, individuals could.
Unfortunately, we're at our time limit today. So I really thank you, Jennifer. That was a lot of information, and
Yeah.
thank you for sharing the website with us.
Yeah.
If anybody wants more information, again, you can contact Katie. Her number is 360, excuse me, I'm on the wrong one.
That's okay. I can say the number too, Lois. So yeah, so you can contact the Senior Community Center 206-842-1616. And I will make sure that you get all the information you need to get connected to Kitsap Aging and Long-Term Care Services. The brochure that Jennifer had up, we keep those at our site at the center. Of course, I know we're not fully open right now, but if you happen to be by there and would like to request that, we can certainly get you that information.
And we can mail them to you as well too. Like if anyone wants to call our office, we can mail them. But this is what I wanted you to see. If you go navigate the website, this is that booklet that has all the information. Yeah.
That's great. And thank you, Natassja, also. Again, if you want to contact anybody, you can do it through Katie. And I just thank you all. It was really fun doing the series. And if we do it again in the fall, maybe we could tell your friends about it and get a few more folks on here.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you again to our host. Thank you, Lois, so much for putting this all together. And yeah, we'll look forward to the next series.